All right. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to give this a couple of seconds to let everybody come in from the waiting room, but those numbers are climbing. So I think we'll get started real soon. Very excited to have everybody here with us today. Yeah, this is looking good. Everyone's as excited about this session as I am. So for the sake of keeping us on track, I'm going to kick us off. My name is Carrie Scott. I work at Spruce Health. I am so excited to be serving as moderator for this webinar today to help guide the questions and help Michael field them in a meaningful way. Today, we are going to be talking about the financial state of private practice for therapists, and we're going to be focused on some survey results from 1,000+ providers that Michael recently conducted. And I honestly think it's a pretty incredible report. So glad that we can get granular and have Michael on with us today. Let me just get to the agenda. So starting with introductions, we'll touch on what is Heard for those of you who may not be familiar. We'll also touch on what is Spruce for those who are not already in the Spruce family. And then we'll get into the survey results, what therapists are earning today, the varied comp across states and license types, how much insurance companies are paying, and more. We will be taking questions as we go. So while you think of them, please drop them into the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. We'll be using that in lieu of the chat function. We're also recording this session. So if for some reason you have to drop off or you feel like you want to revisit something, I'll be sending the link to the recording after we wrap today. And with that, I'm going to introduce Michael. Michael is marketing lead at Heard. He's the founder of Fulwiler Media, and he's author of Therapy Marketer. He is one busy guy, and he knows so much about this space. So we are really, truly excited to have him with us today. Michael, let me have you introduce yourself, because I'm certain I've probably left something out.
No, Carrie, you said it all. Thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Spruce, for having me and for having Heard for this session. Thanks to the 118 folks who are here live on a Tuesday to learn about private practice finances. And thanks if you're watching the recording. Just really, appreciate your attention to this and excited to share these results with you. I'll talk a little bit more about what we do at Heard in a moment on the next slide, but just want to set the context here that at Heard we're really focused on empowering therapists as entrepreneurs, and we believe a big part of that is through financial literacy and education. And there's so much mystery around how much therapists are making. People don't talk about money. You see it kind of in the Facebook communities and then the listers, but it's sort of that conversation is happening behind closed doors. And what our goal with this survey and ultimately this report is really to shed some light on that and hopefully make your practice easier to manage as a therapist and giving you all of the, the information that you need. So excited to share, and please do ask questions throughout. We'll stop and take questions from the audience.
Perfect. All right, well, let's jump in with what is Heard.
Great. So Heard serves as the financial back office for mental health professionals. We offer bookkeeping, tax, payroll services, and through partners also offer business bank accounts, retirement planning. And so, our goal is to serve as your financial partner as you start, grow, and manage your practice.
Brilliant. And just real quick, for those of you who are not familiar with Spruce, Spruce is a healthcare communication platform, and it's designed for all of you on this call today to adhere to HIPAA compliance. It consolidates channels across business phone, fax, text, and telemedicine. And it's a cloud-based solution, which means that you can tap into it wherever you are, from your phone, from your tablet, from your browser. Some folks refer to it as their office in their pocket, which we love to hear. So with that, I'm going to just pass the torch to Michael and let him dig right into those survey results. And I'm going to just put myself in the background and let him take it away. So thank you, Michael.
Amazing. Thank you, Carrie. So in February, we set out to create a report on the financial state of private practice today. And we sent a survey to our therapist community through our email list and through our social media. and also through various communities. And I was hoping for 100 results. I thought that that would be a great sample size. What we got was over 1,200 results from all 50 states. So a very representative sample, which was very exciting. Also something that we weren't anticipating. And so it took us a few months to dig through all the data. We actually had to bring in a data analyst to go through all the responses. And so just a quick breakdown here of license type. And so the most common license type of a therapist in private practice who responded to the survey was a social worker. I think this is really important to call out here. You know, for folks on this call, you're well aware of this, but the general public, I think when they think of a therapist, a mental health professional, they tend to think of a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And so really a lot of social workers out there doing amazing work in private practice. And then in terms of states represented in the survey, which obviously impacts rates and earnings, California was by far the most common state amongst our survey respondents, over 20%, which is pretty typical according to population. And then New York, Florida, Texas, and Colorado were kind of our top 5 states of therapists who responded. But all in all, a representative sample, we believe, of therapists today in the US. And jump to the next slide. I also want to address some limitations in our data and definitely, some learnings from how the survey was conducted, which certainly impact some of the insights. And so just want to, be transparent up front about this, and certainly happy to answer any questions. And so, our goal initially was to determine things like average cash pay rate and average reimbursement rate for every state. And, what we found was that there were many states where we just didn't have enough survey responses to form a conclusion. And so what we've done in the report itself is we've isolated the top 5 states where we feel like we had a representative sample to make claims about averages, right? Just with the law of averages, if you have 5 responses from therapists in Alaska, we can't claim what the average therapist makes in that state. So wanted to be, clear about that. Also recognizing that, therapists who are customers of Heard or maybe have heard about Heard, responding to a survey from a tech company may be, higher earners or more likely to, say, live on the coast. And so that could inflate our numbers. And so something to consider here too, folks who are working in more rural areas, may not have had access to the survey. Something that we didn't ask was about license status. The assumption here is that we're conducting a survey on, private practice therapists. And so, the respondents would be licensed therapists in private practice, but also recognizing that, we could have collected some responses from some pre-licensed therapists, maybe therapists who are working at a group practice. And so maybe their earnings are less. So we need to call that out here. And then also just about caseload size. So something that we didn't ask that we certainly will when we do this report next year is really digging into the number of clients that a therapist is seeing. And so regardless of caseload size, we can still look at what a session rate is. But if we look at total income, right, it's dependent on how many clients you're seeing. And so some of that data, wasn't as valuable. But, certainly moving forward, I think that's something that we'll definitely ask.
That's awesome. Michael, we had a question come in from David. He's asking if the raw data is available for individual states. For example, he's in Maryland and he was wondering particularly about your numbers and how it relates to income and insurance versus cash pay on the East Coast.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that we decided not to publish all of the raw data, but if there's enough interest in that, certainly contact me and I'm happy to share that information with you. I don't know that we want to share that more broadly, but happy if you follow up with me, happy to share those numbers with you.
Okay, brilliant. And we can just share your info at the end. One person is asking how the survey was advertised. And I'm guessing what she's asking is, how did you get these folks? How did you get so many folks to respond to this survey?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we shared it with our own email list, which has about 10,000 providers on it. Also with our customers, we shared it through our social media. And we also asked partners of ours to share with their communities. So I know that Therapists in Tech, which is a great community for mental health professionals, shared it with their audience. And so it was circulated pretty widely. And actually on LinkedIn, we got quite a few shares.
That's great information. Thank you. And then one more, Rachel's asking, she says, you may be getting to this, but did you ask about insurance versus cash? And was that considered in the limitations regarding California is typically cash-based?
Yeah, so we'll dig into that. We did ask about cash pay or private pay versus insurance, and then by state. And so California, we do have data, so we can look at that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll keep us moving then.
Amazing. So with that disclaimer, we did ask about gross business income. And so this is last year looking at earnings before expenses. And so more than half of therapists that we surveyed earned under 6 figures last year. 26% earned between 100 and 150,000. There were some higher earners, 150 and above. And then I thought this was actually interesting. This was as of February, so certainly before the tax deadline, but 3% of folks who responded said they actually didn't know how much they earned last year. We also looked at cash pay rate by license type. And so, this data may not be surprising to you. Maybe it's validating of some assumptions that you already had. But if we look at distribution, psychologists and psychiatrists, on average, their kind of most common range for how much they charge was $175 to $200 per session, which is higher than marriage and family therapists, professional counselors, and social workers. Mental health counselors had the lowest range amongst the 5 license types here, between 125 and 150. Something that I thought was interesting is that of the 205 psychologists who responded, 0% said they only take insurance. So 100% of psychologists surveyed do not only take insurance.
That's great. We had a couple of questions come in. David had a follow-up question for you, and he's wondering if this is therapists in solo practice, group practice, or a mix of both.
Yeah, so it's a mix of both. I mentioned that's something that we did not ask, and we'll definitely ask that moving forward. I'll say too that I mentioned this to Carrie before we started the call, that this is the first year that we're doing the survey, and it's something that we plan to do for years to come. So what I'm really excited is to build on this moving forward. And so definitely taking the learnings from this year, but also being able to compare, say, this year to next year and look at change over time. But yeah, so this is inclusive of group practice and solo practice.
Okay. Yeah. David was saying that he only takes insurance and he's a psychologist, but of course, I'll speak for Michael. I'm guessing, this is a 1,200 sample size. So of course there are going to be those who fall outside of what we're seeing as the trend here. But thank you for that feedback, David. That's great. Christina is asking what the difference is between mental health counselor and professional counselor.
Yeah, so we asked about license type. So it's a LPC versus LMHC. So it's just a different license. Also, can caveat this too by saying that respondents were able to select multiple license types, and so there are some therapists who have multiple licenses, and so want to mention that here as well.
Perfect. Marie had one question from your previous slide. She's wondering if the earnings that you quoted were before or after expenses. I don't know if you know the answer to that.
Yeah, so that was looking at gross. So that's just total income before taxes are taken out. And so I think that really puts things into perspective too, given, the variability between full-time or solo practice. Like more than half of therapists that we surveyed were making, more than half were making 100K. So more than half were making under 6 figures, and that's even before expenses and taxes.
Okay.
I would love to see that number, decrease in terms of the therapist making under 100K. I would love to see more therapists making over 100K. To me, that should be the standard.
Yeah, and I'm focused on reading these questions, so I may have missed something you just said, but Jenny's asking, is it before taxes or before expenses? Because that's an important distinction.
Totally. It's both. So we're just looking at gross income, right?
Okay.
So it's total money coming in. And then depending on your tax bracket, where you live, it's 20, 30% goes to taxes, right? And then any of your business expenses.
Okay, perfect. And were these rates the average rate charged or full fee? Many therapists slide their fees to some extent.
Yeah. So the way that we asked this question was we provided a range. And so they've selected, the range that most accurately reflected what their cash pay rate is. We also asked, and I'll get to this in a minute, about sliding scale. So this is if you offer kind of I would say like if you offer a sliding scale, this would be what your kind of typical cash pay rate is. But it is a good point that many therapists have kind of multiple rates. So I could see if you're forced into answering this question, you'd probably pick the one that is sort of your standard rate.
Okay, perfect. And Heather's asking, is this slide showing charges per hour or per session?
Per session.
Okay, perfect.
So yeah, something I wanted to call out here too that I didn't mention is that I was surprised to see psychiatrists here with such a large percentage charging under $100 per session. One hypothesis I have here is this could be for medication management sessions. So maybe these are shorter, so they're not like full hour appointments, and that's maybe why it's less. But I was surprised by that. My assumption would be psychologists, psychiatrists, especially psychiatrists, are billing at a higher session fee.
Mm-hmm. One follow-up question here. Were nurse practitioners surveyed in this?
Yes, there were nurse practitioners. It was a smaller subset.
Okay. All right. Perfect. I just got someone asking me if we can keep moving on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. And just for everyone's knowledge, this is recorded. I'm going to share the slides and the recording after we wrap. So here we go.
Amazing. So we also looked at private pay rate by state. And as I mentioned, there were states that we didn't have a large enough sample size to kind of make claims about sort of average rate here. So we looked at the top 5 in terms of responses. And, something to call out here is most therapists, like 75%, 3/4 are charging somewhere between $100 and $200 a session. You can see the breakdown by state. It's usually in the kind of the 150, 175 range, which, may not surprise you. There's obviously some on the lower end, some on the higher end. Something I thought that was really interesting here was that New York State actually had the largest number of respondents. They were charging under $100 per session. Some possible explanations here are, early career therapists, maybe part-time therapists took the survey. My assumption would be New York, a lot of therapists in New York City, therapy is, really expensive, rates are really high, similar to say San Francisco. But we also see, if you look at the far right here, over 6%, which is the largest percentage of the 5 states here from New York, charge over $250 per session. So there's definitely some on the high end as well, but interesting to see, 25% of respondents from New York here charging $100 per session. So we were talking about cash pay. Now we will get into insurance. And so we asked, one, if you take insurance, and 75% of therapists take some form of insurance. This number was high to me. My kind of anecdotal understanding is a lot of therapists don't take insurance these days. Most are cash pay. And so again, could have been just the sample that were surveyed. But again, law of averages, 1,200 respondents. So 75% took some form of insurance, and then Cigna ended up being the most popular with Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem, Oxford, and Humana. And also just recognizing that, a therapist, as you know, can take multiple insurance. So this wasn't just a one option.
Thank you. Rachel just asked, INN or ONN?
This is in network. Is that the question?
I believe so, but I wasn't familiar with the acronym, so I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this, so this, yeah, that I would say this is in network. So you're in network with these companies versus out of network.
Okay, brilliant. And does insurance include SCA?
Could you clarify what SCA stands for?
Donna, if you don't mind, could you tell us what that acronym is? We will wait and we'll keep going. We'll give her a second to answer.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, you know what? She said single case agreement. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Donna, we will look into that and we can get back to you. I have your info from registration. All
Great.
right.
So then we looked at insurance by payer. And so this to me was a really interesting data from this survey. You know, this information really isn't publicly available. And again, this is, you know, a sample of 1,200. So it's a large sample, but, you know, we didn't ask every therapist in the country. So your experience, you know, may be different than the numbers here. You know, also want to recognize that, you know, reimbursement by insurance company ranges based on where you live. So we also looked at reimbursement by state, but just looking here, you know, comparing to private pay, cash pay rates, you know, most therapists are in that $100 to $200 range. When we look at reimbursement from insurance, most are in the $100 to $125 range, with 12% of therapists saying that they actually were paid less than $100 per session from insurance. I would guess that that number is actually higher based on my, you know, own conversations and interviews I've conducted with therapists. You know, my expectation is that a lot of therapists are actually getting more in that like $75, $80, $90 range for reimbursement rates. And then in terms of like which insurance companies are reimbursing the best, again, there's some variability here, but interesting to see across the spectrum. Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem, and Cigna were all in that 100 to 125 range. Oxford had sort of a higher skew, 200 to 225, and then a pretty significant percentage over 200. Again, could be skewed because therapists who responded, who, you know, take Oxford, maybe they live in San Francisco or New York or in an area where reimbursement rates are much higher, but thought that was interesting to call out here. And then Humana was in that 150 to 175, which, you know, as a reimbursement rate, I think is pretty strong compared to, again, what I hear from therapists more anecdotally.
I'm not sure if you know the answer to this, but Patricia's asking, is this for 90837 or 90834?
It's a great question. So something that we didn't ask was specific CPT codes. So we were just asking, you know, this, I guess, would be kind of like on average, what is your typical rate? That's why we included a range here. But I think, yeah, to go a level deeper here, it would be interesting to look at actual breakout of codes and see what that distribution is.
Okay. Excellent. And I'm fairly certain that everyone can see your screens, because I know I can, but we did have someone say that they're not seeing it, but I think Jess is handling that in the background. If anyone else can't see this data, let us know. But you will get the recording. So if you miss something, it'll be in there.
Yeah, I would say if you're having trouble with the audio or video, just try to X out and then rejoin. Typically it helps.
That's a good call out. All right. Should I move to the next slide?
Sure.
Okay.
Great. So, you know, I mentioned that reimbursement rate by insurance is also going to depend on where you live. So thought this was interesting. Again, pretty consistent, right? We looked at a slice of reimbursement rate by insurance company. Now we look at reimbursement rate across insurance by state. And again, we see consistently therapists being reimbursed on average between $100 and $125 per session. I thought this was pretty interesting. 32% in California said that they don't take insurance. So pretty high density there. And then we see New York as well, or Texas with a large percentage, 31, not taking insurance. Seems like therapists in Colorado, at least of those who were surveyed, seem to be doing pretty well. The most common response there was 200 to 225 per session. So if you want to make more taking insurance, seems like Colorado might be a good market.
All right.
We also asked folks how they're feeling generally about the economy. And I thought that, this was interesting. It's also not surprising, more than half, so 57% of therapists said that they were either somewhat worried or very worried about the economy this year. And more than half, 63%, plan to raise their rates. We can draw a conclusion there that, therapists are planning to raise their rates because they're worried about the economy. So if you're considering raising your rates this year, know that you're certainly not alone.
Excellent. We had someone just say maybe there were a lot of respondent psychologists or psychiatrists answering in Colorado about that last one.
Yeah, it could be. I'd say that there was, enough responses in that state where you'd hope there'd be more of a representative sample, but absolutely.
Okay, will keep us going.
Yeah, I think it's always, best practice to be skeptical, right, of any data or information. So, I'm not presenting this as the rule of law, just sharing what our findings were. So a couple other kind of insights that we learned that I thought would be interesting to share. So we did ask if therapists offer a sliding scale, and the majority, 73%, so almost 3/4 of therapists do offer some form of sliding scale. I'll give a quick plug here for Open Path Collective. They're a really great organization, nonprofit, that as a therapist, they enable you to accept sliding scale clients. It was $30 to $60 per session. I think that may have increased more recently, but if you're interested in offering a sliding scale or having spots in your caseload and you're not sure how to manage that, they're a great organization that I highly recommend. We asked if therapists are paying their quarterly taxes. And so this is something that we help folks out with at Heard. The rule here, if you're unfamiliar, is that if you as a self-employed taxpayer expect to pay more than $1,000 a year in taxes at the end of the year, the IRS requires you to make quarterly estimated payments towards that. It's called your tax liability, which is your total tax bill. And the next estimated tax deadline is actually on Thursday of this week. And only half of therapists that we surveyed paid their quarterly taxes last year. And so what that tells me is that there's a need for more education and resources around taxes, particularly in quarterly taxes. So, I would love to see this number go up, because what happens if you don't pay your quarterly taxes, if you wait until the end of the year, is you may be hit with a big tax bill that you're not expecting. And so just kind of best practice in terms of financial planning for your business is staying on top of those quarterly taxes. We also asked about other streams of income. And so this is something that we're hearing a lot from therapists at Heard. And I know I'm hearing in my own consulting work with mental health professionals is, a lot of therapists are exploring other streams of income. So 40%, 39.3% of respondents, which is a pretty significant number, reported having more than one income stream. And so that's therapy plus another stream of income. We recently published a guide. It's a pretty comprehensive guide on our website at Heard on various income streams for therapists that, if you're interested in learning more, definitely go check that out. But consulting was a popular form of income. That could be consulting with tech companies, probably skewed a little bit here by therapists in tech, I mentioned, which the survey was shared into, as well as therapists earning income by teaching, offering coaching services, as well as speaking. We also asked therapists about their biggest expenses. And so what was your biggest expense? The biggest expense was rent still, which I thought was interesting. A lot of therapists are still paying rent, even though a lot of folks have transitioned to virtual. But 9%, so like almost 10%, 1 in 10 therapists didn't know what their biggest expense was. Again, this was in February, and we were asking about the previous year. And so what this suggests to me here is just kind of a general lack of insight into their business. And I think there's opportunity, to improve here and really help folks understand their business so they can make more informed decisions, right, about either reinvesting in their business, how much they're taking out of their business in, an owner's draw, how much they're paying themselves, and also how much they're setting aside for taxes. And so it's really important to stay on top of that in your business as a self-employed therapist.
Nice. With respect to that sliding scale bullet, you mentioned the organization. Can you reference that organization one more time?
Yep. So the organization is Open Path Collective. They're a nonprofit. It's free, I believe, as a therapist to sign up, and I think as a client, there's like a one-time fee to join, which just goes towards like running the website and running the business, and then clients are able to find a therapist through Open Path Collective, and the rate is set. It's like preset between, I think it's $30 and $60. I looked at it recently. I think it might have gone up to 40 to 70, but definitely check it out. Just Google Open Path Collective and you'll see it.
Excellent. Question from Maria. Do any of the reimbursement rates change by length of time in practice?
That's a great question. That's not something we asked. And so these are all like really great questions. I think the struggle that I had when I was designing the survey was initially it was really long. And I worried that, if it was too long, that people wouldn't take it. And so we had to make some really tough decisions about what to ask. Because right, if you ask too many questions, then you're probably not going to get as many responses. And so I think for next year, it's going to be a challenge for us to, I think, expand on this and what we've already learned this year, without kind of, making it so long that it impacts the amount of responses that we get. But I think absolutely that would be something that we'll definitely make note of that. The longer that you're in practice, are you making more? Do your insurance reimbursement rates go up over time? And that's it's not something that I know, but would certainly be interested in finding out.
Excellent. We just had someone say that Open Path also has many other types of clinicians who take sliding scale, and that the current rate is 40 to 70 for individual. Client memberships are 65.
Great. Yeah. So I think it was 30, 60. They must have just bumped it up, but still, 40 to 70, I think is a great rate for folks who might not otherwise be, maybe they don't have insurance or otherwise wouldn't be able to afford the full session fee.
Yeah, no, that's a terrific resource. I love it. Let's see. Do we have more, or we just go into questions?
Yeah, I would love to take any questions here from the audience. I know that we went through that pretty quick, so happy to either go back or dig in deeper.
Yeah, we just got something from Maureen, but I'm not sure if you'll have the answer to this. She says she's been hearing a lot about clinicians who bill insurance through Headway. As a therapist who is private pay only, but exploring options to make their therapy more accessible, are there general opinions about Headway? I don't know that you can speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to kind of general opinions, sort of, but what I would say is that it's certainly worth, as a therapist, looking into options like Headway. Alma's another one. They're tech companies, but they help you to get paneled with insurance and then send referrals, like insurance referrals to you. So it can be an easier way to accept insurance without dealing with the headache. Say kind of Grow Therapy is another one. And so as a therapist, I would look at each of those options. You can set up a call with them, learn more about the business, what the rates are, do you have to pay or not? So the main difference with Headway and a company like Alma is, my understanding is that Headway is free to join. So there's no subscription fee or membership fee. And then, the way that they monetize and make money is they have an agreement with insurance companies. And so because they have a large number of providers in their network, they're able to negotiate higher reimbursement rates. And then they take like a small percentage of that reimbursement rate. And so that's how they monetize. But for you as a provider, you don't have to pay for that as a service, which is nice. The business model of Alma is a little bit different. I think they do charge a membership, but they also provide other services as well. And so really just depends on, what your needs are as a therapist and where you want to be spending your time.
Yep, good answer. Someone just asked if there was a question about whether the respondents had a full-time or part-time private practice.
Yeah, so we didn't get that information. I mentioned that in the beginning, something that we certainly will ask for next year. I think when it comes to like looking at gross income, right? It's hard to make any sort of like valuable conclusions there if we don't know how many clients that they're seeing. But like I mentioned, if we're looking at the breakdown of per session, then I think like how many clients they're seeing, that becomes has less of an impact on the data. But absolutely, yeah.
Got it. And now that we're sort of at the end of the presentation, Marie had asked, how much does Heard charge for your services?
Yeah, happy to speak to that. So our pricing is listed on our website. We try to be really transparent about it. If you're a solo therapist, the monthly subscription cost is $199 a month. And what that includes is we do your bookkeeping for you every month. So we help you to track those expenses I mentioned. We help with your quarterly taxes, which I mentioned only about 50% of therapists pay quarterly taxes next year. And then we also do your annual taxes. And so our goal is to make all of that stuff feel less stressful for you.
Love it. Ginny's asking, is it possible to arrange for our clinicians to contribute to the survey next year and or for practice owners to contribute to the next iteration of this survey?
Yeah, absolutely. So something that I wanted to do this year and we just didn't get around to it. And Carrie, we can certainly talk about this next year, but I would love to do this survey and report in partnership with a company like Spruce because it helps us to get a more representative sample. And so, if that's something that Spruce is interested in partnering with us next year on, I'm definitely open to that. And, would love to continue to build the relationship here. We really appreciate, what you do. We get a lot of questions about HIPAA compliance at Heard as it relates to payment, specifically payment processors. A lot of therapists are using Venmo and Zelle, which aren't HIPAA compliant. And so, we kind of advise on that side, but when it comes to communications and the work that you do, we recognize that it's super important. So.
Love that. Thank you. Let's see, we have a couple more things that have come in. So Jillian just asked, do you advise on S Corp versus LLC? Have been hesitant about S Corp as it seems intricate.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're in any therapist Facebook groups, I'm sure that you've seen folks, asking about what is an S Corp or when should I become an S Corp? And so that's absolutely something. So S Corp, without getting, too far into it, is what's called a tax entity or tax designation. And so as a therapist, you form a business entities. And so you can set up an LLC, and then with the IRS, you can elect to be taxed as an S Corp. And the main difference is if you are taxed as an S Corp, you are seen as an employee of your business. And so even if you're the owner and only employee, so you set up payroll and you run payroll for yourself. So you're essentially a W-2 of your own business. And what that means is when you run payroll taxes are getting taken out like they would be as if you had a W-2 job. And so because you're paying into payroll tax throughout the year, you actually don't have to pay the 15.3% self-employment tax. And so there could be savings as someone who is self-employed if you're taxed as an S Corp, but because of having to set up payroll, and there's other kind of considerations, paperwork, filing, things like that, it's a little bit more complicated from a tax perspective. But I will say that being taxed as an S Corp tends to benefit higher earners. And so you may have heard like, well, you have to be making a certain amount of money before it makes sense. And generally that's true. What we encourage folks at Heard to do is if you're just starting out in private practice, like don't rush into S Corp and setting that up in your first year. Just kind of get a year under your belt so you have an understanding of like how much your business is making, and then you can make a decision about electing to be taxed as an S corp or not. But I would say in general, best to talk to a accountant, CPA, tax professional there, and follow their guidance.
Awesome. Jillian, thank you. That was very helpful. We have an anonymous attendee who's been very engaged and has
Thank you.
Feedback for you. And of course, I'll share all these questions with you so you have them on record. This person is saying in the future, it would be awesome if you asked about gross income in 1 year and total number of sessions per year. That would take into consideration how much time a therapist is taking off too.
Agreed. Yeah, that is something initially. I did have some questions around like how many clients you see, are you taking time off or not? And we, like I said, we removed those just to keep the survey from getting way too long. But I think that is really helpful information. And so
yeah,
I'm hopeful too that, if folks hear about the survey and then they want to participate next year. And so if you're here or you're watching the recording and this is something that you're interested in participating in next year, definitely keep an eye out because we will be doing this again.
perfect. Let's see. Boop-a-doop. That anonymous attendee also wanted to add that it might be interesting to see if they are seeing clients in person versus telehealth, and if they're seeing clients in other states or countries. We just actually had a webinar about that last month with respect to going wide and kind of getting into the multi-state thing. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, it's been one of the, the benefits of telehealth is being able to see clients in other states. I know that there's been also, there's been progress made in terms of interstate licensure with respect to, I know, at least counselors, and there's like SIPACT as well. And so being able to get licensed in other states. And so we see that at Heard a lot of, our customers are seeing clients in multiple states, which may or may not have impact on how you pay your taxes. And so something to consider as well is if you're practicing in multiple states or you live in one state and your office is in another, really being aware of all of the tax rules to make sure that you're not getting in trouble there or that you're not like paying double taxes.
Perfect. Here is someone asking, can Heard assist practice owners who also own other businesses unrelated to mental health practice?
Great question. So we're super focused on helping therapists, and that is kind of who we are limiting our services to today. With that said, we do have customers who operate a therapy practice and they also operate another business. Say they offer coaching services or they sell products, and we are able to support them as customers. What we do is we do the the bookkeeping and accounting for their primary business, which is the therapy practice. And then when we go to do their taxes at the end of the year, we just have them tell us, hey, what was your income from these other businesses? Because when you go, especially if you're taxed as a sole proprietor, if you're not taxed as an S corp, you're going to file what's called a Form 1040, which is just your personal tax return. And so any income is going to be included on that. If you do have a business entity, there's an extra form that you file with your personal tax return called a Schedule C. And so if there's any other income, we'd file that for you. But so I think to answer your question is we work with therapists who have other streams of income in businesses. If you're not a therapist, then at this time, we don't support, but certainly in the future, hoping to expand and grow. We do work with some SLPs, psych nurse practitioners, and other mental health and wellness professionals. So we do support, some of those practitioners as well.
Love that. Thank you. Someone just asked if we can talk a little bit more about Spruce, including rates, ideally. Sarah, I would love to do that. But really what I will say is if you just head over to our website, we have a plans page that breaks down what's included in both our basic plan and our communicator plan. The basic plan starts at $24 a month. It's just a flat $24 a month per seat. The communicator is $49 and includes quite a bit more if you're working in a group or with a VA or you have a need for more of the bells and whistles. But I know that Spruce has been really helpful to our therapist community, if you will. And I think Michael would probably concur with that one because they send folks our way a lot of the time. It's interesting. I've been with Spruce for about 2 years, and the lion's share of our install base is firmly planted in mental health. And I think truly before I joined, there really wasn't a marketing arm. So this was just word of mouth. And I think that really speaks to the functionality and the the way in which this solution really helps to streamline a practice and incorporate workflows and such to take a lot of that manual burden off of you so you can do what you do best, which is therapy. So head on over to our website for sure. And if you want to talk to Jess, who sadly just dropped off our call, but would have loved to wax on about this, you can connect with her too. So thank you for that question. We have, let's see here, please create for Spruce the ability to meet with a group. Yes, I know, Carla. We do have that now, but we are always working on ways to, sort of mirror what technology has done in other sectors and remain HIPAA compliant. So keep up with us because we're constantly releasing new and improved features. Ginny has asked if she can receive the raw data. I believe you already spoke to that, Michael, and I'm not sure that that's something you're releasing at this time.
Yeah, just because we, in order to kind of, if you completed the report, excuse me, we did ask for email address because there was a raffle. There was like a drawing to win an Amazon gift card that we gave a few away. And so we do have some like personal information. And so if there's like a specific question that you have about the data, I'm happy to dig into it. You can email me. My email, and Carrie, you can share this out after, is just michael@joinheard.com, which is our website. So feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to just share that with you. But in terms of like sharing over the the entire data set, I would worry about confidentiality there, and I think it's always best practice to shy on confidentiality. So
yep, that's a good call. We're here for that. Anjali is asking, what resources does Heard offer or recommend for new therapists?
That's a great question. So we published a series of guides. If you go to joinheard.com under the resources tab, we published a series of guides for starting a therapy practice in various states. And I think we have 10 different guides there. And that kind of just walks through the process of, if you're just getting started as a therapist, here's the steps that you need to take. And then there's also links to other resources or partners. I mentioned that at Heard, we provide bookkeeping, tax, and payroll services. And then we have partners who also offer, if you need to set up a separate business bank account, you can do that through us. If you want to set up a retirement plan, you can do that with us. And also if you need to set up an LLC or a business entity, or you're looking for guidance on which entity to select, we have a relationship with LegalZoom. And so we work with them to help you with that process as well. And so, like I said, our goal, if you were not in the beginning, is really to help therapists, start, grow, and manage their private practices, and by really providing the financial back office. And so all of the amazing services that Spruce provides, kind of on the the communication and administrative end, like our goal is to provide similar services for your accounting and your finances.
Brilliant. Love it. Well, with that, it looks like we have gone through the bulk of the questions, and I just wanted to point to a few resources here. And again, I'm going to share the slides with everyone, so you'll have access to this. I will also share Michael's email address, since he was so gracious to provide that. We can probably also link out to the report, and Michael, I'll let you tell me where you'd like me to send folks to get access to the downloadable PDF. But there's just so much good stuff here that I'm going to make sure you have all of it at your fingertips. This has obviously been an incredible session. Michael is so well-versed in this space. Let's see, why are we going the wrong direction? Oof, I had one more slide. Here we go. So a big thank you to Michael, incredible partner, incredible insights. We have another interesting session next month. If anybody wants to join us, we're going to have Joe Sanic, author, therapist, and business owner, come on board with us. And he's going to speak to a new book he just published about a 4-day work week, and basically why it's proven to be even more efficient than a 5-day work week. So I know that I want to tune into that, therapist or not. I'm all about how to be more efficient with putting in less time. So do join us. I'll include the link in the outbound email later today. Again, thank you to everyone who joined. Good questions all around. Let me just see a couple more. Nope, just some thank yous. Thank you guys too. And thank you to Michael. Love it all. And let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to. And, if you're interested in learning more about Heard and what we do, I dropped a link. I don't know if you can go back, Carrie, but if you just go to joinheard.com/spruce, and we can, see how many folks are coming from Spruce, which helps us to just, track that. And then you can sign up for a free consultation, if you're interested in speaking to someone on our business development team. And then we also recently started offering a 30-day free trial as well. And so you can create a Heard account and, not have to pay for the first 30 days to really give you a chance to see if you like it. So definitely encourage you to check that out if you're interested in learning more. And as I mentioned, we are already planning for this survey and report for next year. And so if you're interested in participating in that, or, if you're interested in even contributing it, definitely let Spruce and Carrie know. And so, maybe we can partner on the next report and kind of co-produce it together. I think that would be a lot of fun.
That would be a lot of fun. I would love that. Perfect. Thank you again. Everybody's still with us. Now y'all have to just drop off. We'll give you all the stuff you need so you can review it again. I know Michael is incredibly entertaining. So thanks to all, and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.